and it was distributed to over 280 black media outlets, being print and electronic. A number of papers across the country have run the editorial, and it's generated quite a bit of discussion. And so it was an outgrowth of what the mainstream media and cable soon came to acknowledge, that we have people who have been some 2 years at our borders in Tijuana are waiting to get into America, and many of them are Haitian, and they are from South America, Latin America, and Afghans, because it appears that people can get into Mexico to get to our border quicker than any other route to reach here. And what we found was that many of those people have been there over 2 years. The Voice and Viewpoint had been a collection distribution point for many of the Haitians in terms of getting food and clothing and supplies to them. And with the outbreak of the Russian attack on the Ukraine, in the past couple of weeks, we started seeing hundreds of Ukraine citizens showing up at the border, and Title 42, which Trump put in effect during the pandemic, which was supposed to keep people out because of the pandemic, all of a sudden acknowledged that the border officials had the discretionary authority to allow people in at their discretion. And so what we saw was a stream of white people, women, children, men, being let in ahead of the black and the people of color who had been there waiting. And not only were they being admitted to the country put administrative law judges there on the border to process them as they came in, as opposed to people who were trying to get in and get a date and hope to come back, because we've been hearing how overloaded the immigration court judges are. And so now they were getting status approved right there on the spot. And then last week it went a step further, where they started offering vaccine to people right at the border, so they could get their paperwork straight, get their vaccines, and come into the country all at the same time, while the people of color who have been there all along are still waiting to get a date or to have some decision made in terms of their claims of political asylum. And evidently they have taken the war to create a category of humanitarian asylum that overrides everything else because of the tragedies that these people have endured.
So one of the things that I'm really concerned about is the health condition of the people that are at the border. How are they keeping people separate? Because it seems like the Haitians have like their own camp and there's no integration. How are they keeping them separate so that they can then go and let some in and some not?
Well, it's not so much that Haitians will always kind of group together, and people do that. But the problem is that the Haitian relief organizations were the ones that the Ukrainians went to. And so those are the people that knew the process. And in terms of trying to help them in spite of their own situation, they didn't, I'm sure they didn't think for a moment that the very people they were trying to help were going to be admitted to the country ahead of them. And they're going to still be there on the outside trying to get in. This is reminiscent. This is why in that editorial, I cited two other instances. I cited the 1,700 students, African students in the Ukraine, that were not allowed to get on the buses along with the white Ukrainian women and children. And though many of them were black, but they were black mothers with children, they were pushed aside. And the Ukraine official took the position that we're going to take Ukrainians first and you can't get on. So that was racism. We also found people from African countries who wanted to travel to the Ukraine to fight for Ukraine, especially out of Nigeria, which has one of the most educated unemployment components in the world, and no hope of anything there. And many of the young men there saw better to die fighting in the Ukraine than starving sitting around, Lagos. And so what was the Ukraine response? The Ukrainian response was, you got to get a visa, you got to pay your own airfare, you need a minimum of $1,000 to come here to fight for us, which is absurd. If you're charging people to come to fight, and it's not that they wanted to come as mercenaries, they wanted to come to help. And so racism was, again, alive and well. And what we see throughout Europe, I'm glad that Poland is there and all of these countries, but these are white people taking in other white people. And while America is helping, and we understand the importance of America's help, I can't help but wonder every time I hear the president announced the release of additional hundreds of millions of dollars and supplies to the Ukraine, that how is it that we have money for that situation, but we don't have money for the child tax credit? We have a Congress so divided that it let the universal school lunch program expire. And so we're fighting over physically meeting our own obligations to our people, but yet we can come together to help, and I don't mean for it to sound racist, I'm calling it like it is, to help a group of white Europeans not only get into this country. Now we've made a decision that we're going to admit 100,000 of them, but we haven't finished doing justice by the Afghans who put their lives at risk to support our soldiers and were left behind, and are still many of them trying to get in.
So let's go on the political front and say, what is America's obligation, being that we're a part of NATO and things of that nature? What is the true obligation? Why we are giving so much money to this war, to the support of it? And is there any other countries that are giving at this level?
Well, I guess you have to say yes, because Poland has just given in a phenomenal means. You know, if you look at the population of Poland, and you look at in Poland, they've taken in over 300 million people, and they're still taking in people, and they've opened up their homes and shelters and facilities with food and clothing and classes for the kids and all those things. So the countries are taking in people, but you know, you got 4 million people so far that have been taken in the surrounding countries of the Ukraine. You have another 6 million people in the Ukraine who are basically hostages trying to get out. And Ukraine was a country of 40 million people. So you got like 1/4 of the population that's moved. And if you want to put that in some comparison, you remember Hitler killed 6 million Jews. So Hitler killed more Jewish people than the number of people that are in a hostage situation in the country, and more than the total number of people that have gotten out. And people are still coming out every day by the hundreds. And when you look at the film, Putin is going to leave the country a wasteland. You see the apartment building, the housing. That housing can't be recovered the way it's being destroyed. And the place is just being left in ruins. So America is trying to overcome some of the backlash from what Donald Trump did, who turned and thumbed his nose at NATO. We need NATO, and NATO needs to hang together against Russia, because they understand that if Russia is successful in Ukraine, he's coming after the other countries, if you will, because ultimately Putin sees him recreating the United Socialist Soviet Republic. And he wants those 14 countries to come back together, and there's 11 of them out there that are still outside of his reach.
Okay, and you had said 300 million, but you really were saying 3 million that Poland has brought in. And let's talk about when we talk about devastation, destroying of infrastructure, because that's what they're doing, is destroying the infrastructure. What safeguards are being put on the nuclear plants?
Well, you know, that's a very interesting question, because we know that Putin wants Chernobyl, and Chernobyl has still got active nuclear reactors. That's the place where we had the big leak and the meltdown over 20 years ago and destroyed everything in a certain radius. And so far there's an effort to surround at least one plant, but that the Ukrainians were still operating the plant. And so the nuclear threat hasn't gone to the extent of creating a meltdown, but the bombing and stuff, we don't know if it's just targeted to get around that or if that's the ultimate goal. Because it's almost like Putin has the idea that if I can't have the country, I'm not going to let it be anything that you can have or live in. And if he does that, then he's won a partial victory in terms of dislocating all of those people in terms of their lives and what they're doing, if he can't get them to come back into Russia.
Okay, so remember the United Soviet Union, or the Soviet Union, right?
Yeah.
And it was made of how many countries?
14. There were 14 countries in the Soviet Socialist Republic.
So with that being said, they didn't all speak Russian?
Well, no, but they had Russian roots, you know. To understand Russia, and we were very fortunate when we had Condoleezza Rice as the secretary, because she's the only Secretary of State I know who spoke fluent Russian and knew the language and the culture. And the Russian culture is fascinating. You know, as a young man, I was fascinated with Russia, with the Cossacks, and going all the way back to Genghis Khan when he took the effort to unite the Mongol people, and then you come down and you had the great Khans, the Kublai Khans, and all those people who became a part of that Russian thing. They were direct descendants of this whole warrior power clan. And so it's a colorful history. If you ever go watch the movie Taurus Bulba, which is an old movie with Tony Curtis and Yul Brennan, then you get a little bit more insight. Or if you watch Dr. Zhivago and you see the Bolshevik Revolution, in terms of what happened there, you get more insight into Russia and what's taking place. And so it's an interesting country. But Putin has an agenda, and his agenda is to rebuild the greatness of the Soviet Union. And he doesn't know it, but I've said this before on the program, and I'm not going to go off in it tonight. But a lot of what he's doing is really fulfilling Bible prophecy, if you read in Ezekiel, in terms of the whole scenario that's coming together there. So it's a very sad time, and we have big hearts for the people there. But at the same time, we got issues here. You know, we got to talk about this issue of a federal judge, Ketanji Brown Jackson. Okay, and here's a woman who is more qualified than most of the people sitting on the Supreme Court. Here's a woman who caught more hell on issues than Amy Barrett, and Amy Barrett's only answer to everything was, I can't talk about it because it's an issue before the court. And so I think it's going to be a great day to have a black woman on there who has got children and who can relate. And you got these women there. You got Barrett, you have Jackson, you'll have 4, I believe, women on the bench in terms of what's taking place there. So all of this is important, but you had Mitch McConnell come out as a Senate Minority Leader and say he wouldn't vote for the lady. You had Ted Cruz try to humiliate her, and Hawley, all of these senators picking on stupid stuff, trying to use criminal cases and child pornography to trip her up on prior decisions, trying to berate her because she was a public defender for the people at Guantanamo Bay. When all of those people on that committee are lawyers, and they know that as a lawyer that you can be disbarred for refusing to represent somebody. You can see them pull the trigger, and you can assign, and you still are obligated to make the best possible defense. And so all of this is an important thing. And I see where, what's his name?
Corey?
No, the senator from Iowa, I believe, Utah. And he had him on television meeting with her, and he's saying now he thinks he's on the fence. He's not sure he can vote for her. Meanwhile, Susan Collins, a white Republican woman, has come out and said she will vote for her, and her vote would make a guarantee that it wouldn't take Kamala Harris's vote as president of the Senate to break a tie. So it looks like she will get it, but is the ridicule, it's the racism, Dr. Thompson, and I mentioned it this week, that there was never hearings held on Supreme Court justices until 1916 when Louis Brandeis, a Jew, was nominated for the bench. And from that day forward, there have been hearings. And so what do we see? The Supreme Court, which you don't have to be a lawyer to be a part of, the Supreme Court is considered as the last bastion of white control. And so to have all of this color come into it, I mean, Clarence Thomas was let in because he was no threat, and now we know who really wore the pants in his house the whole time anyhow. And so that and it was an insult to put him in a seat held by Thurgood Marshall. But this is the American way, the same way they elected a Trump to follow Barack Obama, okay? And the same way they had, the Andrew Johnsons follow a Lincoln. So it's always been, if we come forward too far with progress, then they got to throw somebody in there who is radically going to turn the clock back.
One of the things that I think that we have to just be real, and that is that it seems like every Supreme Court person that goes before the hearings and everything else, it's always based on the party. Whatever the party is, they seem to ask questions that are always challenging to try to trip the judges up. The thing, and I'm not going to say this because I vote more mainly Democrat. It just seems like some of the questions that came up this time were not only race based, race driven, but also very elementary and almost juvenile, playground questions, and not really thoughtful, insightful questions. I heard one question: what does it mean to you to be a woman? Okay, I was born a woman. I was born a woman in this body. I'm a black woman. What does it mean to be or define woman?
Well, you know what, Dr. Thompson, and you're a teacher. Why would you expect college questions from kids in the sandbox in preschool?
Yeah.
Okay. And so these people are not bright because they are there.
Mm-hmm.
These people are there on a mission, and the mission is we got to stop blackness.
Yeah.
Okay. And oh my God, here we got one, because these are the same people 3 times in the past that have already confirmed this lady for judicial positions.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden there's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why this weekend I talk in my editorial about Judge Jackson, democracy, and the Republicans. And I point out that America's democratic system is based on 2 parties, but it is in danger of destruction from within because 50% of that party, being the Republicans, are operating from the standpoint of they no longer care about the Constitution. They don't care about the oath that they took. All they care about is how can I undermine and stop it.
Yeah.
40 years ago, we were in danger of them calling a constitutional convention. And a lot of us were concerned that if we had a constitutional convention, that they might go in and do things like abolish the 14th Amendment, equal protection, the 13th, the 14th, the 15th Amendments. Those things were in danger. Well, this group today, this immoral Republican, conservative, racist element has taken a position. We don't care anymore about what the rules are. All we care about, like a lynch mob, is who's got the rope. Let's lynch them.
Yeah.
And that's what we have taking place.
And the thing that, for me, which I was really concerned about, is that because she was a woman of color, she was a dark-skinned woman of color, and she had natural hair, I thought we were going to get a whole bunch of questions about that because, again, normally they can be okay with the lighter skin, they used to say back in the day, the ones with the king's features. But this is woman that's unapologetically an African American, and she carried herself that way. And even in her emotional moments, she still was able to articulate her position and where she was going. I think she's going to be an outstanding Supreme Court justice, and I believe that before Biden gets out of office, we're going to see other opportunities for more justice to come.
Well, I think that we will. But when you mention the hair, they didn't deal with the hair as much then as they did with the passage of the Crown Act.
Yeah.
Okay, and the Crown Act was important because of all of the flack that black people have caught about their hair.
Yeah.
And I have a person that works with me whose hair is wavy, and because of her parentage, and she was sharing with me that in one position she had, because she just combed her hair out and let it be frizzy with the curls like now you see on TV, and that's a way of showing that the family is biracial in terms of the hair. And, there was a time that you couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And remember the young man who ended up going to the Supreme Court who was stopped in La Jolla because he was walking down the street with dreadlocks.
Yeah.
Okay, and he won that case in the court against them. And so it's always been about trying to deny your expression of your color, but yet you don't see anyone trying to stop the Jews from wearing the little cap that they wear.
Or the long locks.
No, that's not. Yeah, they might talk about the locks, but the Hasidic Jews, they keep to themselves for the most part. But we have this, and then we have issues right here. You were in San Diego Unified. You got all of these Muslim students, especially girls, in terms of the outfits that they wear to school. They cover their heads and the whole bit. The adults do it too as well. So uh, you just got all of this going on.
Hmm.
Yeah, I know somebody was mentioning the signing of the anti-lynching, the Till bill, the Emmett Till anti-lynching legislation, and that becomes a strong tool in the hate crimes chest, you know. But it also helps us understand that every lynching is not a rope,
Hmm.
okay? Because it goes to all the ways that people are
Okay.
attacked based on color.
Hold up. Wait a minute. You done dropped some knowledge. Go back and explain that one because you can't just say all lynching ain't with a rope. You got to say because if that law's going to cover that, we need to understand what that means.
Well, you know, the lynching whole thing, it's interesting that people don't understand the history of concepts. The lynching, the hanging was done from a tree, basically, okay? And the concept of a hanging comes out of the book of Deuteronomy,
Hmm.
all right? And in the book of Deuteronomy, you have this reference to if a person is hung, the body from a tree, that's the curse, and the body has to be taken down by sundown. Well, when you get over into the New Testament, Jesus was crucified on a cross, which is made out of wood that's on a tree.
Tree.
But when you read Galatians 3:13, it talks about how he has redeemed us from the curse of the law, a curse being the hanging on a tree. But then what happened on that tree? Is no accident that Joseph of Arimathea begged for the body, and that by 6 o'clock the body had been removed from the cross and put into the tomb, because that was fulfilling of the prophecy that the sun couldn't set. Now, if you really look at crucifixions, you go back and look at the old version of Spartacus, and all of those people that were lined up on the cross on the roads leading to Rome, those people were not dead when they hung up there. Those people were left up there to die of starvation. They were left up there for the birds to come, pluck out their eyes, eat them alive. The bodies decay until they just fell off the cross. And so this whole hanging concept, it has a biblical root that they don't even understand. And so we come down to us being hanged. That's why Nina Simone and Billie Holiday, they sung the song about strange fruit, okay, because it wasn't, the fruit from a tree was not supposed to be black people.
Hmm.
It was supposed to be pears, apples, oranges, or whatever, but it wasn't supposed to be us. We were the strange fruit hanging. And so we see the pictures. We saw it in Oklahoma. We see in the old pictures of the white folks that have a black body hanging and all the white people standing around laughing. We know they did things like they cut off the ear, they cut the genitals, they took souvenirs. They did, because in order to justify, you have to dehumanize, you see. And so that's why this law connects the lynching to the hate crime, because the whole essence of a hate crime is to deny the humanity so that the inhumane conduct can then be justified that follows it. And that's important. And
Okay.
so the law is important, but I can't help but remember Mr. Byrd, who was drugged behind that truck in Texas until his body came apart. Okay, we just got so many instances
Yeah.
of this stuff happening.
And I think what's really important is that, a lot of times when we talk about hanging, the significance that many black people were hung throughout slavery and in our time here in America. But we don't ever want people to say that they were the only people that were hung.
Oh, no.
We know that Indians were hung and Latinos and Asians were hung. And this has been a dehumanizing practice for people for many, many years.
Well, they hung a
And,
few good white people if they got them, called them stealing horses.
yeah.
They hung them.
Yeah.
And for a long time, capital punishment in this country was carried out by hanging, not by lethal injection.
Yeah.
And in some places, there's been a movement to go back to hanging, since there were all kinds of problems with the formulas that were involved in the lethal injection.
So okay, I still want to stay in politics. We did the world politics. We came and did some politics in America in D.C. and what's happening over there. Let's go down to Florida. And let's talk about this new Florida bill that has passed about, I think it's the anti-gay bill they call it.
Yeah, you can't say
Yeah.
gay in a first through the third grade scenario. And, this is a very interesting thing when you consider also the problem that we have right here in San Diego. Because next week, the Board of Supervisors is going to be asked to vote on a resolution from the Leon Williams Human Relations Commission that, in effect, will give that group in their bylaws the power to censor, vote, and remove anyone who engages in speech that they consider unacceptable. And that whole movement is the outgrowth of Pastor Hodges, who made the statement when he was pushed in terms of abstaining on voting on the resolution involving the LGBTQ community, when he was pushed as to why, and he wrote it Deuteronomy 25:5 in terms of what the word says, then that was the word abomination was in the scripture. So if you follow their behavior, the Bible itself is hate speech, because the Bible is very specific in terms of homosexuality, Deuteronomy, Romans, Leviticus, all through the scriptures. It's got all of these references into how God views behavior along the lines of what we're dealing with. Mm-hmm. And so it is one thing for this issue to come up where we say, we have a right. Well, yes, everybody has a right. I want to be very clear that we don't confuse this, because, see, disagreement has been transformed into hate speech when disagreement is not hate speech. Disagreement just says, I have a different point of view. And I like this draft that Joel Anderson, supervisor, has written, because he's the one that appointed Hodges. And he made a reference to Andrew Carnegie's book about success, when he talked about how to win friends and influence people. Mm-hmm. And you do that by having the ability to listen to mm-hmm. people. And so in my editorial, this week that I've just written, I make the point that if you cannot hear the speech that you disagree with, then there's no communication. Therefore, there's no need for a commission to talk about diversity and how people come together.
Well, let me just ask you a question, because, this will come up many times. It's not what you say, but it's how you say it. You know what I'm saying? I think that many times people get wrapped up in not what is being said, but how it's being said. You know what I'm saying? And does that still make it right for censorship? Because I tell people all the time, and I tell young people this, you could curse somebody out while ever using a curse word, but they know that they have been checked. You know what I'm saying? And you could do it, so eloquently. I say to people all the time, I've been in conversation, and I've literally said to some people, I said, you know what? Your arrogance is offending my arrogance. And it's almost like a mic drop. They're like, oh my goodness. He's saying that he does have arrogance of where he stands, and I have arrogance, and it's offending, and we're conflicting, but we're still going to listen to each other. So my thing is that when conflict takes place, how then do we then, as a commission or as a group of people or a community, come together and say, how do we do this better? And how do we do it in a way that the point is taken without being, like, say, for instance, and this is the thing, and I want to say this, Dr. Warren, you can either choose to hear or choose to be offended. A lot of times we choose to be offended versus having the conversation.
Well, Dr. Thompson, as you're speaking, my mind races back to Bishop Desmond Tutu, who chaired the Truth and Reconciliation Commission following the independence of South Africa. Mm-hmm. And the black people in South Africa certainly had reason to be in a hate mode and against the white folks there. Mm-hmm. And yet Mandela as the president and Tutu as the head of this commission, who often found himself in tears, had the patience to listen to people who were hateful and listen to them justify their hate. So many times he was driven to tears with it. Mm-hmm. But he was a brilliant, gentle person. And I am so glad that Pastor Jerry and I, my late wife, that we had an opportunity once to spend about 15 minutes with Bishop Tutu here in San Diego and to really talk with him. And it was so inspiring to find a person that was so full of life and understanding, brilliant, not racist, but brilliant. And he understood, like Dr. King learned from Gandhi, that the power of love was greater than the sword. Gandhi understood that. And you consider Gandhi's background, and maybe some of us need to go back and look at some of these stories if we're not going to read the book, because Gandhi was educated as a lawyer in England, and he came back to India. They had a caste system, and that caste system was as bad as the racism that we have here. And yet, all of that was overcome. So I don't understand how we can, even here in San Diego, we've got equity and diversity in the city, and we got race, human relations in the county, and we got all of this. But at the same time, we have one element because we have other people here. We have African communities that are Muslim, and we have black people here, Americans who are Christian. Those elements had not always gotten along. And 25 years ago here, we had a group called the Conference of Christians and Jews, which before I left the conference expanded to include Muslims. And all of these elements need to work together because when you look at it, these three religions all share the same source. They all come from one man, from Abraham. And so now we've got people who do not care about foundations or truths. We're being programmed that there's no absolute truth and that political correctness based on what a handful say it is more important, and that and you're trying to hide behind the freedom of speech. But the First Amendment does not say anything other than that there shall be no official state religion. That's what when it says that the freedom will not be abridged. It doesn't say you can't worship differently. And so we have all of these things coming together now being distorted so that people who have the greatest passion and the loudest noise are seeking to override. And there can be no truth and reconciliation where there's no listening.
Yeah, and I think that's the whole thing, and it's like, I'm gonna shift to take this a little sidebar away from the politics, but it is a part of now our world as well as it's a part of us as black men and black people, and that is, everybody's having the conversation of what happened at the Oscars, and there's a lot of speculations out there. There are a lot of people that have their opinions. People are taking sides. Some people are hurt. Some people are bruised. And I wanted to say to some people, let's stop the conversation about this and let's talk about some of the other great things that took place that night for people of color. We did see Questlove, the brother from The Roots, the brother who plays the drum with the afro pick in his hair, get an Oscar for Best Documentary.
Which was Summer of Soul.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm like saying, we have to be about changing that narrative. Samuel L. Jackson, the man that has had more cuss words in movies in life, got his Oscar.
Yes, Lifetime.
And I thought that was good. I also thought that was good is that we actually saw some of the leaders and the veterans when this thing took place get up out of their seats, get out and became senior statesmen about what should, happen next. And here's the question, and this is where I'm going. When something happens in your community, people of color, how do we as elders and how do we as a community deal with it so that it doesn't permeate and continue to grow?
Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to control the narrative, okay? And so we know that media, which is always interested in the numbers. I mean, I've seen Will slap Chris so many times until I got numb from watching it. And you would think that the whole Oscar was about the slap.
Yeah.
And yet it wasn't. There were so many significant things that happened. Things like Lady Gaga coming out there with Liza Minnelli.
Yeah.
And I remember when Liza Minnelli did, what was it, Carnival or Caravan?
Yeah.
Whichever one she did. I remember when she did that musical, and she was young and active and everything. And I was just watching her in the wheelchair, and it stuck out to me because at the time that I saw it, I was on a a 747 in first class flying back from Hawaii to the States, and I was the only person up there, and I remember just watching this movie by myself. They just pulled a cart up and parked and said, "Help yourself," and then to see this lady 50 years later, or to see those characters from The Godfather, to see Al Pacino and Gage, and to hear Pusso giving his dues, because too much can't be said about that movie in terms of, if people go behind the background and look at what happened in terms of even getting it out, how the movie broke the mold the way it was made, how when they took it to the studios, they insisted that 90 cents out of every dollar be guaranteed to come back to the studio and not go to the movie house that was showing it. They weren't going to make but a dime. And distribution was different in those days, because the people today don't realize this. When a new movie come out now, you just hit the TV. But I remember when the movie came in a big canister, and the movies coming from L.A., they used to come to San Diego to Greyhound, and they'd have to go down to Greyhound and pick the movie up to take it to the studio to show it. Okay, and so we've come a long ways in terms of things, and to see them honoring these people who did so much in terms of time, I think that's phenomenal. And while I applaud Spielberg remaking West Side Story, I mean, there was just so many good things in there. A lot of black talent was shown in terms of what took place.
Yeah, and the thing about it was an all-black production crew.
Yes.
Yeah, and that was history. And watch this. People don't know, I'm just going to talk about the gospel segment when they were doing the In Memory Of.
Yes.
That was Lena Bird Miles from California, the Bay Area. She was on the Midway last year. She was singing the lead, and that was also David White, who used to be at West Angeles Church of God in Christ.
All right.
And all of these people were there at the Grammys representing, and Beyonce,
Oh, you can't say too much about what she did in Compton. That was just phenomenal.
Yeah, and I'm like sitting up here, and how they got the dresses to be so connected to the set. I mean, it's like almost disappearing.
Well, you know what? And my wife and I was watching this, and we said that whole thing was better than the halftime at the Super Bowl. They could have thrown the halftime at the Super Bowl in the trash can. And just
well, hold up, because you know some of us hip hop folks, and we saw there's a lot of us that just really loved it. And I think the reason why we loved it was because there's that East Coast rap, there's the Midwest rap, and then there's the West Coast rap. And this is the first time that they allowed the West Coast rap to be on a big stage. So I would say it was a great performance for what it was, but we also, want to celebrate what we saw at the
Well, this is your world, Dr. Thompson, so I'll yield to your world. For some of us old time, we didn't see all of that. All we saw was a whole bunch of noise moving from stage to stage. And when I looked at the Oscars, they could have dropped that in that slot, and it would have been outstanding. Just Beyonce's performance with the kids in Compton was worthy in and of itself. It cost a lot to get that done, but it was so beautifully done. And
but what was one of the key things you just said? She was where?
In Compton.
And she had what with her?
She had the kids from Compton, including her daughter there with her.
And that's the amazing piece. And this is what I want to say. Key things that took place in that Oscar for our people. And that was she gave young people an opportunity to be on an international stage. Those are life-changing moments that these young people will never, ever forget. Now, let me go there.
That's beautiful.
I'm going to go there with you on this one and say this. And I want to take it all the way back to the Gold Coast when the very, very first time that I ever walked Qualcomm Field was at the Gold Coast.
Yes. It was a lot of firsts for people because for many people, it was the first time they ever had a skybox in Qualcomm. And we made that possible in terms of it. And we were determined to bring people something because we always believed in the 3 E's that I share with people. And the 3 E's that Pastor Jerry and I followed were exposure expands expectation. And so if you expose to more, you can expect more. And so you can see how that works. And so I thought that the Oscars was entertaining and well done, and that black people made it significant by the roles they played. I did not think that Will deserved the Oscar for that he got.
Well,
In my mind, the Oscar should have gone unless I hit it out of sequence, and maybe I did because I haven't seen everything. But Denzel playing Macbeth to me was powerful,
well,
and the best supporting Oscar, the whole opening up to the deaf world
yeah.
of skill and the manner in which the guy in the best supporting role played that part. That should have been, there were a whole bunch of things that should have been.
But one of the things about the Oscars and the voting and everything else that nature is that sometimes it's more than just who played the role. Sometimes it is about who's connected to the role, the girls and all the other things. At the end of the whole thing, I always tell people this because I'm not a big awards fan because I think all awards are political, and that the people that win don't always be the ones that we should win based on the merit, you know.
You
But
talking about Oscar awards?
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Oscar and Grammys and
Yeah,
all the other ones
those.
because it's very political and who votes and because even let me use the Grammys as an example. You have to be a voting member of the Grammys, but people don't understand that how certain people win is because labels get together and say, I got so many people in the Grammy Awards. You got so many people. If y'all vote for my people, we're gonna vote for your people in the other categories. So they have a lot of people teaming up together to vote and to impact those awards. So we're still trying to make it somewhat fair, but it's still very yet political.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, the Oscars lost credibility a long time ago. I mean, when you look at the performance that Denzel gave in Glory, and you didn't give him an Oscar.
Yeah, that one right there.
But then he come back and play a thug cop in Training Day, and he get an Oscar for being a black thug cop.
Well, hold on. Now you done started something because see they totally lost credibility with me when they gave Halle Berry the
I
best.
wasn't gonna leave that out
Yeah,
because when she got on her knees in that
man, that messed me up.
thing, so what it says is, black man, you can be an Oscar for being a thug, and black woman, you can get an Oscar for being a hoe.
Yeah.
And so, neither of them have done us justice because the damage and the harm was done.
Yeah, and so in the long run, this is the message that I would like us to put out. We have to look beyond the infraction. I'm gonna call it. Can I call it infraction?
If you choose.
Yeah, we're going to look. We have to look beyond the infraction and look at the total Oscar awards and celebrate the excellence that we did see, and not put so much energy behind the negative. It has to be dealt with. I know that I truly believe it will be dealt with financially. So, in the community, I'll say this way: there's going to be the legal handling. There's going to be the financial handling. There is going to be the street handling. Right now, I would say that Chris is in the driver's seat because his concerts now are selling out all over. His new tour.
From $40 to $1,300 a ticket.
Exactly. Huh? And so I would say to them that let the process play out. But all of you extra folks that got all this energy and all this other stuff, use it in a positive thing. Let's talk about what was good and let's stop accentuating everything that's bad. It has to be dealt with.
Yeah.
But then don't overlook all the good.
Well, I would agree. We had such fun with these topics that we didn't remind people that they could have called in if they had something to say to 858-251-6111. We still have a little bit of time left here. And so we always want people to have an opportunity to express themselves. We've been dealing with a hot topic. And as one person I made the comment that the 3 female co-hosts really rocked in terms of the Oscars. And I like what Schumer said when she said they got they got three for the price of one,
Yeah.
which is a reference to how much women are underpaid in terms of what takes place.
Yeah.
I also like the manner in which that the whole audience acknowledged the deafness when they waved their hands as the deaf way of applauding and showing a sensitivity. And so it was a strong evening of entertainment, but I think that we need to go beyond that because I look back at things like Black Panther. You know, we've had some good movies that just got passed over. And so, and then we've had situations in the past where the Oscars paraded out the president, who at the time happened to be a black woman, the president of the Academy. But that blackness didn't change a lot of what was taking place. And maybe we don't understand what it means today in terms of an Oscar. Does it give you new bargaining chips in Hollywood? You know, because we got so many phenomenal things being done by black directors. You know, Halle Berry's movie that she directed about the sister who was a fighter, phenomenal piece. You know, they've come from in front of the camera to behind the camera. Denzel has done a whole series as he makes the effort to put August Wilson stuff before the camera. And so it shows that we not only can be in front of the camera, but we have skills beyond that. And we want to mention people like Ava DuVernay, who not only from her documentaries like 13 and all the things she's done, but even her current TV series, Naomi, that she created, you know, and it's just talent, and more talent. And so I think we want to celebrate the talent. We want to accentuate and imitate and build on the talent. We need to look at where we are individually and see what is it that we can do, because God didn't create any surplus people.
Yeah.
All of us have a unique ability or skill or talent. And I like the way that we reach back in the Oscars and remember people like Melvin Van Peebles. You know, that people think of Melvin as just in one thing, but if you go into this brother's history, how he went to France and taught himself the language and became a producer before he came back, and quiet as it's kept, before he died, he was very wealthy in terms of the stock market and the things that he did.
Yeah.
And so we got all of this talent, you know, and this is what we want to celebrate going forward.
And this is the direction that we really want to take America as well as our society. You know, we could spend a lot of time talking about the negative. We can make jokes and everything else of that nature, but we should spend more time on the positive and uplift this, because again, like they say, cream will always rise to the top. And if you talk about the cream and stop worrying about the sediment, eventually the sediment won't be an issue because you'll always be with the cream. And that's what I'm really encouraging people to do, because right now people are making money off of drama. Granted, the Oscars was not going to be a well talked about event, and this now has made it the trending topic for a whole week. You know, but I tell people, after the trend and all the jokes and everything else, people got to live real life. And we got to make sure that our other young black men and women understand that what took place for you as a non-celebrity, if you would have done the same thing to anybody else, you would be still locked up waiting for you to see your lawyer.
Well, you know, it's still not too late for Will to go to jail, because society takes the position that what he did was commit a battery, which was the unlawful placing of hands on a person of another. And so Chris doesn't have to file a complaint. The DA can file a complaint and go after Will just for the battery. And I mean, you can't deny it because the proof is there in terms of it. And so this is something to be mindful of in terms of how far does this go. A lot of people also let us not miss saying that this is the same man. A few minutes later, everybody gives him a standing ovation in terms of this award, and he's allowed to take all this time to cry and everything. I was far more impressed with the award that Samuel L. Jackson got as a man who he is a unique person in himself, because unlike Red Fox, all of his language doesn't have to be vulgar. You know, he's done Star Wars and he's played the Avengers, and he's just made so many different kinds of things. But there's such a strength of the personality. If you see the name Samuel L. Jackson, you don't even have to know what the movie's about. You just know you want to see it.
Yeah.
Okay, because whatever he does, even in Django, Django with what's his face?
Jamie Foxx.
Yeah, Jamie Foxx. I mean, he made the part. The language wasn't what we used to, but he made the part. He just makes whatever he does.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a great thing. We want to celebrate that, but we also don't want to get so caught up in the vicarious lives of other people that we miss the contribution that we need to make where we are in our own lives.
And that's the reason why, they say art imitates life. We got to make sure that we use this as a teachable moment, because like I shared with young people, you can make a split-second decision that literally can change your life forever.
Yes.
And so many of our young brothers and sisters have made those split-second decisions, and the outcome was not what they expected.
No.
So the whole thing about stop, think, breathe before you respond is something that you have to continue to teach, continue to push. You cannot be so angry, so impulsive that you forget about everything else that matters, because at the end of the day, sometimes when we as people make those split-second decisions, it doesn't just affect us. It affects the whole community.
This is so very true. And so let me just do a couple of things as we close, Dr. Thompson. I want to remind people as the Women Month ends that the Voice and Viewpoint last week had multiple pages recognizing historical black women and unique contributions that they've made. And you can view it online, but you can't download it. And you can still get a souvenir copy of the paper because it's just so full of people and it's so educational in terms of things that we've done. And it didn't include everybody. We just went for the women who were the first at some of the things that they did. Because if we had just done all the things that black women have done, we would just made a special book and just published it.
Don't be mad because your mama made the first sweet potato pie and we didn't put it in the paper.
Yeah.
We didn't know, or we didn't have room for everybody, for all the first.
Yes. And we didn't know that the first pie was made by your mama.
Yeah.
Or we might have put it in there. If we had known, okay? Yeah. And so we come to the end of this month, and we got some other things that we're working on that should be just exciting and filling, and we thank you for your ongoing support of the paper and the community. The paper must never be substituted by social media. Social media can be a part of it, and we have become a strong part of social media. You can follow us with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We track every week how many people on all channels in terms of what's taking place, and putting stuff up that people want to see. And so we invite you to get involved and to be supportive of that, and so that we maintain our place, because it's an institution, and we are you and you are us, and that's what makes us work.
And with that being said, Dr. Warren, I always say, and y'all still saving trees, because everybody's on their little Kindle and on their phone now, because y'all got an app that they can check out. And so we're really excited about that. Well, this is another week from the desk of the editor. Believe it or not,